Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I extend my most cordial welcome to all of you, and may I extend my most special welcome to Ms. Alice Weidel, the co-president of Alternative für Deutschland, AfD party, at the press conference organized on her visit to Budapest. And may I extend my cordial welcome to Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, the representatives of AfD, and all our distinguished guests. And first, may I cordially invite Prime Minister Orban to deliver his address. Distinguished Madam President, dear ladies and gentlemen, no matter how we wish to deny it, there is something very peculiar about this meeting. AfD is not the party whose leader is received everywhere in Europe by prime ministers. But it is high time that that should be changed. That is why we are here today, and it is to my great pleasure that Madam President accepted my invitation and visited us here in Budapest. Thank you very much. The German-Hungarian relationships constitute a very special relationship within Europe. It is not only worth thinking of history, but also the current figures. Hungary would fare much better if Germany were successful. The two economies are in a very close relation, and we await and expect the upcoming period when Germany will once again be successful. And in the backwaters of the German success, we Hungarians, the Hungarian economy, can gain access to extra dynamics. Madam President and I covered multiple issues, but what was most important to us Hungarians is as follows: what can we expect? What can we Hungarians expect from AfD? The way we can answer that question is if we observe the program of the party AfD and if we enter into negotiations with Madam President. And I can tell the Hungarian public that all the most important items on the program agenda of AfD would be beneficial to Hungary, and it would be great if they were implemented, starting from migration all the way to energy policy. So the most important lessons learned from this meeting, which I can convey as a message to Hungarians, and there are many Germans who actually live in Hungary. There are some 30,000 Germans who have moved to Hungary, and there are hundreds of thousands of Hungarians who have a relationship with Germany through their relatives. And it's especially to them that I say that everything that AfD represents, if it were implemented, it would do good to Hungary, and I can bravely say that based upon our talks today. Naturally, we also discussed Europe, since both Germany and Hungary are member states of the European Union. I was actually the more radical in that issue, which is no little feat, but in quite an unveiled manner, I told Madam President that I firmly believe that Europe, the European Union, is in great trouble, which has two reasons. It is in trouble because of the content of the politics, the policies that it is currently implementing, and it is in trouble because of the way it wishes to implement it. So there's a problem with the content and the problem with the form. So that I can describe the situation in a German philosophical manner. Contextually, what is the problem is that the economic policy performed in Brussels today condemns us to a defeat as opposed to our competitors in the world economics. With this current policies, you cannot push Europe onto a growing path, a path of growth. Migration also has an economic impact. We have to admit that too, but we must also admit that the Green Deal is dead. It cannot be reformed, it cannot be adjusted, it cannot be reshaped. We must simply forget about it. We do require a green approach. The climate issue is very important, but the way it has been compiled and how it is called a Green Deal in Europe, it will be the ruin of us, because the result of that is that we have to pay 2 to 3 times as many for electricity and 3 times as many for gas as our American competitors. In that way, we cannot win this competition, and we cannot win any economic competition. Therefore, we require a completely new energy policy. I am convinced that the energy sanctions have to be abolished. The negative discrimination towards atomic energy has to be removed, and the old energy transportation routes have to be reopened, and the energy sources that have been abolished have to be reintroduced to the European economy. And I must also say that there are already visible signs of the problems of the European economy, but as we Hungarians say, the worst is yet to come. The wrong economic policy of Europe and the wrong Green Deal, its consequences are about to be felt. So much about the content. As for the shape, the form, the reason why the European Union is in great trouble is because it strives to perform policies against the people. While the people clearly state that they do not wish to see migration, Brussels represents a pro-migratory approach. A vast majority of people in Europe want peace, and the European Union wants to win a war against Russia. The European people want to protect the purchasing power of their salaries. They want a policy that supports the middle class, and as opposed to that, what they receive makes them increasingly poorer. So there is a democracy problem as well. If a ruling elite is not willing to accept what the people expect of it in significant issues, and is not willing to incorporate this democratic will into its own policy, then there is a democratic problem, and there's also a political, consensual, and a formal problem with the shape of things. These are the issues in Europe, and if this continues, I do not know who will save the European Union in the end. We also exchanged serious thoughts on the war. It is well known that Hungary is the only country in Europe which, in the Russian-Ukrainian war from the very beginning, has been on the side of peace. We regard this war as a bad war, and from the first moment we recommended the isolation of this to the European Union. We should isolate it, limit it, and before it starts escalating in its embryonic form, we should make it manageable. The European Union opted for the very opposite of that, and they entered on the war path. They dug out the tomahawk and painted themselves with war paint and called the war their own war. And therefore there's a countless inflow of very expensive arms and financial sources to Ukraine for the sake of a hopeless war. I reiterated to Madam President that Hungary is still on the side of peace, and we consider it a great historical change that the United States of America has also become in favor of peace. So it's not only the Vatican and Budapest, but the Vatican, Budapest and Washington, D.C. that stand for peace, since the President of the United States wishes to implement a policy of peace, and I interpreted that to Madam President as a positive and hopeful sign, which hopefully will bring about the date of the closing of the war, the end of the war, as soon as possible, which, besides the gaining impetus of the German economy, would be the other prerequisite of us here in Hungary to fare better. I also shared with Madam President that Hungary is incapable of saving the European Union. We're talking about a country of 10 million residents. We cannot remedy the problems, issues of the European Union. The French and the Germans have to do that, and we have to work on ensuring that Hungary is successful and be successful. If there is a European Union, then that way, and if there isn't, then without it. We closed our discussion in that optimistic fashion. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And now I would kindly invite Ms. Alice Weidel, co-president of Alternative für Deutschland, to deliver her address. Thank you very much, Prime Minister Viktor Orban. I would like to deliver my heartfelt thanks to you for accepting my wish to meet you here today, and it is a great pleasure that I had the opportunity to do so today. To us and to me personally, it's very important that we maintain a good relationship with our European neighbours, first and foremost with Hungary. We, as Alternative for Deutschland, have noticed that our relationships towards our direct neighbours have deteriorated, first and foremost meaning Hungary, but also with our old partners, the great powers, the USA and China. Our and my primary goal is to repair and improve these relationships clearly, and that is the reason why I have traveled to your fabulous capital, Budapest. This is a beautiful city that you are justly proud of. You have a wonderful country that you are quite rightly proud of, and it is exactly that I wish to achieve in the case of the Federal Republic of Germany. Our country, Germany, has become weak, a weak country with a weak leadership, with a weak economic policy. The backbone of the energy policy was ruined with a completely wrong energy policy, starting with Angela Merkel, who therefore ruined our country. Uncontrolled migration flows into Germany, and in that relation the government of Germany has caused problems to our neighbours, especially in Hungary. Hungary is the field of force against illegal migration, and we as Alternative für Deutschland do not wish to see any illegal migration in our country anymore. Our country is suffering, the people are suffering due to illegal migration, imported crime, the high level of foreign crime and the high level of juvenile crime. You can read that from police criminal statistics. These figures are all underlined. The problems also enter into economic policy. In Germany, we have the highest tax rates amidst developed countries, which the working people feel and suffer. Therefore, for Alternative for Deutschland, it's very important to re-establish order in Germany. We wish to achieve a proud Germany. We wish to be proud of our country, like you are proud of yours, which you have achieved. Why you are a symbol to us, Alternative for Deutschland, the symbol of sobriety and the symbol of independence and sovereignty. This is what I wish for myself and for my country. And that is why I will step up as a candidate for Chancellor, so that we can do away with illegal migration and so that we have a sober energy policy with sober energy prices. Germany is a country where we have the most advantageous energy supply, which was ruined due to a green ideology starting with the CDU. We stand up for a drastic decrease of taxes. In Germany, if we enter into government, we shall abolish the CO2, we shall abolish or we shall diminish the various taxes, corporate taxes, personal income taxes. We shall abolish the CO2 quota, obviously. And we shall count on you. And what is also very important is the protection of the freedom of expression. In Germany, we follow a policy of banning, only known from the socialist plan economy. Angela Merkel was the first Green Chancellor that we had. I wish the direct opposite. I want freedom. I want a free Germany living in well-being, a sovereign Germany which has a good relationship with its neighbours, which has a good relationship with East and West. This is our primary task. And this includes the fact that our own country, which is the largest country in Europe in the center, should once again stand on its feet and not on its head, and so that everything be remedied and a great role, and you are a great role model in that to us, and we wish to achieve that together. And in relation to the European Union, yes, you are quite right when you say that I express myself in a more restrained manner than you, but I do believe that we must make joint efforts in order to reform the European Union, and that can only start from the inside, internally. And this is only possible if we have strong nations, and this is only successful if the competences of the European Union are curbed, if the bureaucratic, expensive, and from my aspect, corrupt structure is demolished, and if these people should find a sensible job for them to start working so that they can have a sense of what the average working people feel like, and then they could probably understand what policies we wish to establish for the sake of Europe, because the policies that we wish to introduce would lead Europe to become strong again with a strong leadership. And the leadership would not be in the hands of an elected commission, not in the hands of Madam van der Leyen, who was not even elected. The decision would be in the elected parliament, and for that we need strong and willful nations. And I can promise to you that for us, the alternative for Deutschland, for Germany, AfD, if we can form a government, we shall follow in the wake, follow in the footsteps of our role model, Hungary. We shall re-establish order in our country, and I wish to thank you for your sensible policy, for your fight for freedom, which you have performed for the sake of the freedom of the nations in Europe, and we shall happily follow you, that we shall do away with this ban on the freedom of expression, and we should look ahead to the future of Europe with great hopes. Thank you. Thank you very much. We shall now... Good morning, I'm Laszlo Mészáros from Hungarian television. I would like to ask from Madam President and Mr. Prime Minister, during the course of your talks, did you discuss the reforms of the Brussels migration policy? And my question goes to Madam President. What is your take on the fact that Hungary has been ordered to pay a fee of €1 million a day for closing the southern border, and do you plan to take joint steps in order to curb illegal migration in the future? I am very grateful for the fact that Hungary remains a force against illegal migration, and it is a complete and grave mistake to condemn Hungary to pay fines for that reason, and that shows what a bad track Europe is on. Hungary actually complies with the laws and regulations. Who does not do so is the European Union. The Schengen zone, which has been established over 30 years ago, and the single market, we only saw after the mass illegal migratory waves that we saw that Schengen was a failure. Schengen should have been abolished, because Schengen can only exist if we protect the external borders and therefore can open up the internal borders, but that is not the case. It was always our program, and I am all in favor of closing the internal borders, and let's us do it the way Hungary does, that we become a force against illegal migration. We cannot do so any longer, because the European Union is in favor of illegal migration. We are against it because we wish to protect our population and our countries. It is not only expensive, but also dangerous. And what is happening in Germany and what is happening in France is something that we shall put an end to immediately. And in the case of a government headed by the AfD, we shall also step out of the European asylum system or refugee system. Hungary has a population of 10 million. Germany has a population of around 84 million. It would be very impolite for us to provide recommendations to the heads of any other state, but in the case of such proportions, we must be extra cautious. So I would refer to the Germans and Germany and the voice of respect, with one exception, and I must apologize for that, but that is migration. They almost ruined us. If we had allowed for the pressure to take over us that came from Germany and Brussels jointly as of 2015. Added to that were the US Democrats, and if we had complied with the rules that were forced upon us, and if we had implemented the orders that were issued to us by them, then from the aspect of migration, Hungary would look like Germany, which we do not wish to see happen. And once again, my full respect goes to Germany, but Hungary lived through very difficult and hard years when huge German pressure was and remains actually on us to change the migratory regulations and rules and allow the migrants to enter into Hungary. I do not wish to provoke anyone, but the number of migrants in Hungary, Madam President, is zero. Just imagine a Germany where there is not one single illegal migrant. Imagine a Germany where only those can enter into the territory of the country whom you allow to step onto the territory of the country. This is what we have in Hungary, and this is what they would have us change every day, and that's why we have to pay a fine of 1 million euro a day, and we have to pay a fine of a single payment of 200 million euros, is because we do not allow illegal migrants into Hungary. That is the case. I am not a great mathematician, but it is easy to calculate that if this 1 million euro was taken away from us each day, it's still cheaper for Hungary than letting in illegal migrants. Not to mention the fact that allowing illegal migrants to step into the country would have a historic and irrevocable impact. So we have no illegal migration in Hungary, and I apologize to Madam President. But if Berlin and Brussels separately or together do somersaults in the air, we will not take any steps back in the case of illegal migration, because we must protect the borders of our country, and the illegal border crossing is a crime, and anyone committing a crime will be condemned and they shall be removed from the country, and we shall not change that. I must also say that it is not against Madam President, but we have a bad feeling against Germans, namely that it is not acknowledged that we are Germany's protective force. We protect Schengen and the entire European Union from the south by not allowing the illegal migrants to enter into Europe. You should observe us as captains of these border fronts. I'm not saying that you should pay us a fee monthly, because that is not expected, but at least do not shoot us in the back. If you cannot utter a nice word about us, then at least do not impose fines on us. This is an abuse of European power from Brussels, and it's an abuse of power from Germany. The question is, what can we do in such a situation? I have no hopes towards the reformation of the Migration Pact. It's bad as it is. It has to be disposed of, and we cannot convince the Brussels bureaucrats of that. There is a single path in this environment, and that is revolution. You have to revolt against the current regulations and the Migration Pact. We revolted against it in 2016, but Poland also did that. In Poland, what they are doing is the exact same as what we Hungarians do, but they are commended for that, whereas we are penalized, and that's due to ideology. And if I understood the program of AfD is that they would actually assume the Hungarian regulations, which is a revolution against the Brussels rules, and that is what I wish for, that Germany revolts against the migration pact, therefore providing us Hungarians with help. Thank you very much. Auf eins, the floor is yours first. I am Martin Miller from Auf eins.
With the United States, considering that President Trump, on one hand, is pushing back the globalistic liberal agenda, but on the other hand, he could make a very aggressive politics in traffic, in tariffs and trade against Hungary and Europe. Und an Frau Weidel die Frage, Sie sind ja auf der europäischen Ebene.
So in the European level, you have some differences with AfD. You mentioned some differences that you have in relation to the European Union. Does AfD plan for any strategic relationships with Fidesz, and what would that mean in the field of European cooperation? Thank you. May I answer your second question on my behalf as well?
May I just have some sentences for clarification? So AfD-vel való kapcsolat.
The relationship with AfD, despite our closeness in ideology, had one very public obstacle, and this is no secret. I openly mentioned this to Madam President. It is of great significance of Hungary that we establish a good relationship with the government of Germany, the current government of Germany, regardless of its composition. So there is a level of the countries and the level of the parties, and I would never go as far as to demolish Hungarian interest over the party's interests. That's why I was cautious with AfD, but I now believed that everything would come to a change, and it is obvious that AfD is the future. To me, from what I see, what I can interpret, what becomes obvious to me is that if a ruling elite refuses to stand on the side of the people, well, there comes a party that is on the side of the people, then they have the future. And since the popularity of AfD has reached 20%. So they're 20 million. They're 20%, sorry, in Germany means divide 80 by 5. That's a number of votes anywhere between 15 to 20 million. The political camp of AfD is almost twice the size of the entire population of Hungary. A relationship with such a party, with such a support, cannot be penalized on the level of interstate relationships. So not even the German government can penalize that in the dimension of interstate relationships. The support enjoyed by AfD is so big, and this is obvious to everyone, and I believe that is the future, and that is why I believe the time had come to invite Madam President. As for President Trump, the first and most important issue is that the American liberal progressive boots have been removed from our Hungarian chest, and there were two boots on our chest, the Brussels progressives and the US liberal administration. One of them have now been removed. I am not saying that the current situation is comfortable, but at least we can breathe. So the great international pressure against which we had to make the country successful has now been cut in half, and that's a great deal. and the skeletons are pouring out of the closet. It turns out that from American taxpayers' money in Hungary and probably in other countries too, all of our opponents had been funded, progressive, left-wing media, NGOs, everyone, and that has come to an end. From that aspect, the political competition will be more fair than it used to be. My second comment is that as I see, the President of the United States has changed or shall change the world in 6 issues. This is clear to see and obvious. Number 1, it will change the way of thinking of the world in 6 issues, I believe. As to how that will be implemented in reality, that's a different question, but the mindset will be changed. Number 1 is what we think of migration. To cite the American president, it's no good, it's bad. It's not good, it's bad. The second, it will change our way of thinking in the fact that war is bad, peace is good. So far, the opposite was stated in Europe. War is good and peace is bad. If anyone who wants peace serves the purposes of Russia. But that's put to an end because the Americans have stated that war is bad and peace is good. Number 3, it will change our way of thinking concerning a Green Deal. Without the respect of the requirements and demands of the industry and the economy, any Green Deal is bad. What I hear, the best car is that it's not manufactured. I hear that from Germany. I mean, it sends shivers down my spines. A green policy, saving the world in a way that we do not take into consideration economic realities is impossible. That's the third change. Number 4 is Christianity. In the world, it has become fashionable. The progressive liberals have made it fashionable to mock Christian communities, Christian values, and Christian traditions. That has come to an end. Christianity is respectful. The Christian communities represent a value. That is what the President of the U.S. says to everyone. Mocking a family has been put to an end. Demolishing the families is bad. Strengthening the families is good. And number 6 is free speech is good and political correctness is bad. And that was the other way around as well. The progressives said that political correctness is good and uncontrolled speech is bad. That has been put to an end. These are 6 important changes in the world. What are happening here? And for freedom fighters like us, if I may refer to my president as such, so this is very beneficial for freedom fighters like us and the economy because
Trump government in the USA.
The problem is that the heads and leaders of the European Union and the European institutions, as scared chickens, are just sitting low in the field, awaiting their fate. I mean, scared chickens have no future. We're sitting there, or like the monkeys mesmerized by the snake, and we are just waiting to see what the President of the U.S. will do. This is the worst that we can do, because the President will come and do things that will make us sweat. It will come and represent their own interests. We only have one option. We have to stand up bravely, with force, with self-assuredness, and provide recommendations for the Americans. Obviously, they would not like to see the imbalance of trade between U.S. and Europe maintained, but we shouldn't just await the attack like the scared chicken. We have to stand up and say we have a recommendation. We have 3, 4, 5 recommendations, and we have to start negotiations. The problem is who? The European institutions cannot be taken seriously. The greatest problem of Europe is that it has no serious representative who could initiate U.S. and European negotiations. Only 2 countries come to mind, possibly, or preferably jointly, the French and the Germans. So the future of Europe is in the hands of France and Germany. If they provide a leadership for Europe, there will be a leadership. If they don't, then there won't. And that will have its economic detrimental impacts in Europe, not only in the U.S.-European relation, but in the China-European relation and every other relation as well, because there's no mercy for the weak. I received the second question. How we behave towards each other within the European Union, that was the main essence of your question. I think the answer is clear. I am standing here in Budapest and we are talking, and I do believe that the first step must always be the dialogue. We have to take into consideration what our joint interests are in order to formulate a strong joint policy. True, a strategic policy, and your question also referred to that, is to establish a free, strong, conservative voice in Europe so that we can reform the European Union and Europe, because we want to return to a peaceful Europe, which is a Europe of strong leadership. And since I'm talking about leadership, it's very important what Mr. Orban just mentioned previously. Europe now is without leadership. In this situation where President Donald Trump is the new president, it is very important that we have someone in Europe who can sit down to the negotiating table, but we have no such entity in Europe because it's a bureaucratic organization. The US has no one to turn to. The strong countries, France and Germany, based upon their size, but only based upon their size and population, but they are without leadership. The leadership has failed in Germany. Let me reiterate what has happened in our country. We had an unstable coalition, a traffic light coalition, which on its own tells us that that name was the program. This cannot be negatively surpassed from the aspect of ridiculousness. We saw a consistent policy making against the people, and that has to be done away with. And that is why it is very important that we show once again leadership. We must again lead our countries. We must establish a good relationship with our neighbours, and we must lead the European Union from where it originally started out. The European Union of homelands, of nations, from the free exchange of goods and services. We want to return to a market economy, a free competition. We want to turn away from Brussels bans, because this is communism and a plan economy. We thought that we had done away with that, but that is not the case, because previously, the Conservative Party, like the Union in Germany, has taken a turn towards the left. And therefore, at a federal level, we are the second strongest party, and we are still growing. And in the previous German Democratic Republic, no wonder. I mean, that used to be a communist regime where people were put into servitude. And the Alternative for Deutschland is the strongest force there, and that is quite right. The people rightly sense where we belong. And what I can say to you is that as soon as AfD becomes a governing party, we shall do away with the suffering of the people. We want to establish freedom. I want freedom for the people. We want the people to be able to freely decide what they consume and what they purchase, what they buy. We want the corporations to be able to freely decide what they want to manufacture. Supply and demand, that's very easy, very simple, and people must be left alone in that, because the people on their own, all of us as individuals, know best what is the best for us. There is no state that can dictate that to us. The bureaucrat is unaware of that, and therefore we must abolish the overburdening plan economy policy of bans. And this policy of bans, this Green Deal, has ruined our countries, first and foremost Germany, because Germany is the only country that is walking on the left side of the road in the European Union, which has consistently embarked upon that path. We have the highest energy prices, we have the highest taxes. Those who produce our penalized in our country. They have to pay penalties, and this has to be done away with. Why? Because the German corporations are leaving our country, therefore causing unemployment. And the question remains, who shall fund all this? We have to act very rapidly. Alternative for Deutschland stands up for this rapidity, for assuming a governmental responsibility, because our country would deserve that. And in relation to peace, we want peace in Ukraine. Similarly to you, as being the only ones in Europe, we are the only force in Germany which always stood up for peace in Ukraine. You can see that the German governing parties and the EU are always strengthening the spiral of escalation, which I believe is very dangerous. And that is why I'm hopeful for the new presidency of Donald Trump, who alone started talking about peace. Therefore, I have very high hopes towards Europe, led in freedom, in peace with neighboring countries, first and foremost Ukraine, but also Russia. And I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. The floor now goes to Origo. Good afternoon. I am András Kovács from Origo. In light of today's meeting, how do you see the future of German-Hungarian relations after the 2025 parliamentary elections? And today's meeting, can it contribute to the fact that AfD, together with the CDU, with the help of the Hungarian government, could form a governmental coalition? I want to stay as far away from the German election campaign as possible. The Germans can decide who they want to see as government and what coalitions should be formed. The Hungarians have no say in that, and I remain far from that. There is one thing I don't remain far from, and that is telling the truth. And we in Hungary hope that there will be a government in Germany whose economic policy also serves the purposes of the Hungarian economy. Today I have been convinced that AfD has such a program. The other thing that we hope for is that there will be a government in Germany which will remove this Brussels pair of boots that is currently perched on our chest. The Germans so far have acknowledged that. They didn't encourage it, but they acknowledged it, and that Brussels dealt with us in a discriminatory fashion. We want a German government that stands up for fair and dignified treatment. Everything else is in the hands of the German people. Reuters. I am Krista Dan from Reuters, and my question goes to Mr. Prime Minister. Why is it 10 days prior to the German elections that you open the door for the German far right and you actually harmonize with the CDU and CSU and the Chancellor? And my other question goes to Madam Weidel. Did you discuss the following? What the Hungarian government, what do you think of the Hungarian government's and Fidesz's gender and family policy? First of all, thank you very much for the question, because this provides me with an opportunity to do away with myths. And the myth, and I refute that on my own behalf and on behalf of the party, that we would be a far-right party. This is a stigma that German office, the constitution protection placed on us, which discredits and defames other parties and would ban from the party policy competition. This actually states itself as unconstitutional because the Constitution says that every party in the competition of parties deserves fair and equal treatment, and that is not the case in Germany. From the aspect of the authorities, there is no free, equal competition between parties. AfD, structurally, since its 11-year existence, I have been a party member for 11 years. I have never before been a member of any party. So the AfD is in a structural disadvantage due to structure defamation and due to the efforts of the mainstream media, due to the paid public radio. And I'll tell you what we shall do. Yesterday I mentioned that in my speech before the Bundestag, and I would encourage you to listen to it, watch it, and you will see what we stand up for. We want a free Germany. And as a first step, we would reform the Internal Intelligence and the Constitutional Protection Office because they don't work according to their mission. They work solely against the AfD. And we shall abolish the various forms of taxation because the public radio and media is very strong in supporting the government. As opposed to that, the media has a task, namely to act as the fourth branch of power in democracy, and that is dealing with information and transparency, namely ensuring that every voter be able to formulate their decision based upon adequate information. And this is what the public media does not fulfill in Germany. Therefore, this calls for fundamental reform. So I refute this label, this stigma, as I always do in Germany as well. And I will state also that we are the second strongest power at the federal level. We are the strongest in East Germany, and the tendency is on the rise. And if within 1.5 weeks we will not be able to assume government due to an anti-democratic firewall, then the following will happen. In 2 years from now, you will see if I was right or not. Friedrich Merz will establish an unstable coalition with the Greens, which means that only a left-wing Green policy will be ensured. And they are also misleading the voters because they are copying our program. And if in the future they cannot fulfill their promises, then the voters will jump over to AfD and they will opt for the original. And that is why I share with you here and now that you should make the original strong, AfD. You should read our program, you should listen to our speeches, and you will discover one thing. We are alongside a free conservative policy. And you also asked me about family policies. To us, the traditional family is the most important. Why? Because almost 100% of children are raised in a traditional family. And families should be supported accordingly. I do believe that you asked me for a reason, because I am liberal. But liberal has since become a curse word, so I would say that I am free. Yes, I live together with a woman, and together we are raising 2 boys, 8 and 12 years old. We are a fantastic family. To me, the family is where the children are, always. But this will not stop me for standing up in favor of a guiding principle which is important to us as the fundamental unit of society. And it is completely misleading to digress from that and harmful to society. And if I may add something, and it's very important why they never ask the childless, why they don't, why they enter into family policy, why they always ask me. All I can share with you, based upon my personal experience with my partner, is that the idea that of how those from the left approach woke and gender leaves us indifferent. We just wish to live freely. My wife and myself don't want drag queens in the school. We don't want gender commissioners. I would not like our children to be confused in gender issues, or children in general. We're green and left-wing teachers who can't even teach children to read and write and to count, can change their sex once a year. This is detrimental to the young souls and is detrimental to the identity of young children, and therefore I am in favor of a policy as such, because this is always mixed up. I will never allow me to be taken advantage of due to my way of life. And therefore I would like everyone to make their own free decision according to how they live their life, and so that the state does not interfere in the private life of families. That is my credo. Well, we received the answer as to why I invited Madam President. We wish to see a brave woman who is a brave leader and freedom fighter. We could see that all together now. As for the question why I invited her now, I can answer that I would welcome every candidate, chancellor candidate. There was no long line, however, I must admit. The situation is that the time was selected by Madam President. If she had said or asked me to receive her one day before the election, that's when I would have received her, but she opted for this day, and I was happy for that. And I was happy that we could meet before the elections, because I am convinced that after the elections, AfD will be observed by everyone as a successful party, which means that there will be a huge crowd of people around them to congratulate them. It is easier now, and it is brave and cool on behalf of the Hungarian government to act as such. Thank you very much. One final question. Budapest Zeitung, Jan? No? Well, in that case, thank you very much. This concludes our press conference for today. Goodbye.